Hello, everybody, and hello, my favorite Ayushi.
Hi, Tash.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
How are
Oh,
you?
no jinx. You can't speak now for the whole episode. Oh, it's your dream. I can't do that to you.
Yep. If I had done Jinx to you and then you couldn't speak for the whole episode, that would be too much.
Honestly, I would not be able to do it. I'll say it right now. I do not have that kind of self-control to be quiet for that long. I just don't. Because you would say something that I would immediately have to be like, actually, the thing is, that's wrong.
It's good to see you and it's good to speak with you.
I know it's been a tough week for
Yes.
us and some of our friends, and it's just been emotionally a little challenging. We all received a little difficult news. We've been trying to work through it, and
We thought we should also take a moment on the show and acknowledge to all our listeners that I know it's been a time for many, many of us of grief and loss. Um, we hope you're taking care of yourselves and your loved ones and processing feelings the best way you can and
that's
being
such a
kind to people in these times.
I think that's just like you're saying it so nicely. I'm just angry. Like my default right now has just like baseline. I've just been angry for a long time, but now it's recently it's just been feels so unfair and but anyway,
What you release releases you, Ayushi.
what I release releases me.
Yes.
So I'm releasing anger so that anger releases me. Right?
My mountain wisdom is lost on Ayushi.
No, I just really know how to manipulate everything to suit my own
Your needs.
narrative. Absolutely. This is like when Naveen was talking about faith, and I was like, yes, how should I make this about me and my faith?
I'm sorry, everything is about me.
It is. This is the Ayushi show. But anyway, for everyone who's tuning in, I don't want it to be like, oh, this is going to be a sad episode or something like that. It's not. It's just the honesty of where we're at, and we've been trying to be more forthcoming about this stuff as well. It's just, it's not easy, and I, I get it. I get
Our
it.
email is open to everyone. Honestly, write into us if there's things you want to share. If you or someone is going through something, you just want to talk about it, let it out. We're here.
Yeah.
And on that note, welcome to this episode. It's a very exciting episode. Ayushi and I are thrilled to be here today to learn something new, as Ayushi
And
already learned today.
I actually learned something quite I learned something that I kind of knew, but I think it was a fact that I just pushed out of my brain because it just
Convenience.
yes, convenience, and it was an inconvenient truth to keep it in line with the
Oh, I see.
theme.
Nice. Very nice, Ayushi.
But I learned that it takes 500 or more years for a sanitary pad to degrade.
Disintegrate,
Like it's,
decompose.
yeah, decompose, degrade, disintegrate. So it's basically not a biodegradable product. And if I have to back calculate how many periods had so far in my life as a 29-year-old and how many pads I've used, my carbon footprint is so bad. It's so bad.
It's not just you. I mean, it's a lot of us, many of us.
No, I know, but and what I mean by the inconvenient truth is this specific thing somehow. I never want to make myself feel bad about it because the answer is always, look, my period is bad enough. Having to deal with this every month is bad enough that I don't want to get into this thing of like, oh, now it's my responsibility on top of all of this to like be environmentally conscious about it or make an like an inconvenient change or an uncomfortable change. So but when I read 500, now I feel really bad.
Which is why we brought in some experts. So, without further ado, Ayushi, should
Yes.
we segue into the main chunk where we have two incredible guests who have done some amazing work in this space? Please
And
welcome Jessamijn and Kathy.
woo! Welcome, ladies. And can I just say that you are going to help us have this conversation about sustainability, feminine hygiene, but you're not going to make me feel bad about this pad thing, okay? Because I have already spent all day. I have spent all day being like, oh God, I'm just imagining landfills of pads and tampons piling up.
Yeah, I had that and then I switched to the cup. But anyway,
But
I
yeah,
have showed off. I've showed off enough now.
all right, welcome to the show, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to give us a little background about who you guys are, what you've started, and why we think you're amazing?
Hi, well, thank you for having us. I'm not quite sure why you think we're amazing, but we're really thrilled to be here. So my name's Kathy, and I'm with my co-founder of Eco Femme, Jessamijn. Like you, I'd say we also have become very close friends over the sort of 11, 12 years that we've been doing Eco Femme together. So that's fun to have this kind of shared woman thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so I could share a little bit about the journey with Eco Femme. We actually both live in Auroville, which is an international and intentional community in South India, in Tamil Nadu. And this is where we met. And I think that obviously we're both foreigners. I've come from Australia. I moved to Auroville in 1997. So I've been here about 24 years. And personally, I kind of encountered the challenge of dealing with sanitary waste pretty early on. Like, I think it was one of the first sort of rude awakenings that I had to this new kind of culture and environment that I was living in, that I didn't have the convenience of easy to the convenience of sort of bins and easy disposal mechanisms for my sanitary products. And that got me thinking about, what else could I do? And I was lucky enough to find a cloth pad on holiday in New Zealand and just gravitated towards the product and fell in love with it. So that's how I personally got into cloth pads. Maybe, yes, would you like to share your story, how you discovered cloth pads? And then we can tell you a bit about how Eco Femme evolved from there.
Yeah, hello. Also from me, thank you for having us. It sounds like it's going to be really fun. I'm so fun. I've been really enjoying listening to you too. I was not really sort of aware of it until we started working on it. And then I thought back as like, hey, actually these pads have been in my life for a very long time. When I was a small girl, I grew up in Indonesia, in Sumba, and there were also no products available there. And my mother was stitching from cloth, stitching pads with women in our area, and so somehow it was always a very sort of logical product for me that was around, and I made my own when I had to go to places where I wouldn't have any access to products. And
Wow.
Then I also lived with housemates who all used cloth pads, but in hindsight, it was interesting that it was never really a conversation, and it was never a very conscious choice at that time, and it was just sort of, but then when Kathy and I met in Auroville, and we looked at options for livelihood for women, cloth pads, because Kathy had already been making cloth pads for Auroville's internal consumption, and had seen also a possibility, like an interest for a market. And so when that sort of came up as one of the options, there was really sort of no discussion about it. It was like, yeah, let's do that, let's try. And because it just seemed to fit so well, because the women had already been learning how to stitch, and I think we both wanted to engage with somehow a meaningful product. And
Right.
over time, I think that just grew into more than just, just stitching up pads for sales, but we really also got interested in, okay, how is it that women here are managing and experiencing menstruation, and then learned about, like, okay, what does the taboo actually look like? We knew about it, but it didn't really sort of understand the sort of And I think one of the surprises there was also that it was actually, despite the taboo, so easy to talk with girls and women about menstruation because they're so interested in it. Maybe really sort of deprived of information and wanting to learn. And that really, I think that both gave us really sort of energy to not only look at the side of production of cloth pads, but also at menstrual education for girls and women, especially from low-income backgrounds.
It's incredible what you guys have done, honestly, because while doing something good for the planet, you've also managed to make these women who are working with Eco Femme self-sustainable.
And also, I think what I think is really cool is the fact that you guys also run the awareness campaign and the sessions that you have for talking about menstrual health, feminine hygiene, and this conversation. Then what was interesting right now is that you said that actually turned out to be quite easy to talk to women about it, and I think that's because we all do want to talk about it. We do want to talk about our periods.
Women in safe spaces where they have been given the permission to feel safe and talk about things. I think that's one of the most special things you can create for Indian women, especially.
And the only reason you might think that it's something that we don't want to talk about is because we're not allowed to talk about it in a public space, in a public forum. So it's like, oh, this is something that you don't discuss at all. But if you look at any girl chat, on any, like on a WhatsApp group, an Instagram group, whatever it is, if there's just a community of just girls talking to each other, women, talking to each other, it's like there's so much freedom about what's happening in your pants. It's amazing. And it's so liberating because you feel part of course, you feel part of the community, but you're also like, this is a joint painful experience. And there's so much comfort in being able to share between each other. I know how much support we get from the girls group that we are on. When we have our period, the first thing you do is like tell your friends, like, I got it. As if like this doesn't happen every month. We're always like so surprised and so upset that it's come back. But that I think that's the best part, is that you guys have been able to facilitate these conversations for people that it's not so easy for before. But that's so cool.
You know, just to build on that, like when we started, like we mentioned that it was the environmental aspect that really motivated Jessamijn and I at first, but actually the more we got into it and started having these conversations, and we found that actually talking about, for example, first period stories was really a powerful entry point, because, you know, like everybody has a story, and it's, you know, it's not just also in India, it's all around the world. And we realized this was such a universal theme. So the whole topic of menstruation, even though we kind of came at it from the point of view of environment and trying to offer an eco-friendly product, but we realized that you sort of touched on one aspect, and there were all these connections, you know, health and gender and environment, economics, like it was all connected, and it just made the whole project so much more interesting and exciting for us. And, you know, we had a lot to learn, and of course it's not our culture. We had also to really make sense of a lot of it, but as you rightly say, it just got really interesting and very intimate, the kind of conversations that we're able to have. People were hungry for these conversations. You know, women were, not only were they not inhibited, but they were like really enthusiastic to talk. They excited. They just needed sort of in a way someone to open the gate, and they were through, you know. So
I love that.
That makes me so happy, just knowing that there's more women who are able to talk about the things that affect their bodies, because we've been made to feel so embarrassed about it for so long. And it's very easy for us in the like, at least in bigger cities where we're definitely from a privileged, educated, like, you know, cut of society. And so it's so easy for us to sometimes forget that this is also a privilege, to be able to be very blasé about it, or be very, you know, like, obviously I get my period. I'm not scared of talking about it in front of men. And that's something that we take for granted. But the idea of opening this up to more and more women is so, so important and crucial.
Also, the getting of, I'm just having these thoughts right now, getting your period and the environment, like the environment has to support you getting your period. And I'm guessing originally when women and men were created and the whole menstruation cycle started, I really do wonder, how did the first woman, it was, I guess, dry leaves or something like that, no, to soak up the blood. So I don't know if
Bleach
tradition,
or-
sawdust and stuff also, right? People used to use, I don't know what they were using, but
I think also a lot of free bleeding, actually, of bleeding into your skirt, wearing a special skirt for it.
correct.
Yeah.
And menstruation huts, I think this is in a certain way part of the origin of this idea of ritual seclusion, but women actually were not so active and moving around, so they would tend to go somewhere and just bleed into the earth until their period was
Right.
done. So, yeah.
It's actually a very earthy energy, and I'm obviously in this trip right now because so I have been in nature for 2 months, friends, let me tell you. And the
Well
last
done.
time I had my period, I went on a very intense trek, and I used the menstrual cup. But of course, when I reached the top of the mountain, I realized there was a water shortage there. There was no soap. So I'd carried sanitizer, wet wipes, and toilet paper with me. And I'd carried a pad just in case. Because I was like, now you need hot water to either boil the cup, or you need soap to wash it with water. I had none of these options. So at the top of this mountain, I have removed the cup and poured the blood into the soil and then had to wear a pad. And I was like, of course, it's nice to say, oh, women everywhere should be given options for sustainable menstrual hygiene. But so many women don't have access to the basics of hygiene in terms of clean water, soap, so many of these things. So then, of course, using a regular disposable pad seems like a good option. But that also, it costs money, it's expensive, and it's not easily available everywhere. Cloth pads are interesting, however, because you use water to wash them. But again, you need the water. And I'm going around in circles right now, but there are so many levels of the harshness of the environment and the struggle women go through because of this one thing. Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
No. I think you're absolutely right. And the idea also is so daunting that I have to now, just like I was thinking of you on this trek. And, we've traveled together when you've had your period. And we're like, when we went on safari and you were like, well, no, I got to stop because I need to get to the bathroom and do all this stuff. And I was like, not only is this thing of like the inconvenience, but there's this now whole mental game attached to this, that now I have to calculate how long it's going to take me till I get to the next place where I have access to amenities. Then am I going to be in a safe space enough to be like, okay, guys, we need to stop because I got to go do this? Am I confident or like secure enough to be like, I have to go take care of this? And so there's so much mental stuff built into the act of taking care of yourself and taking care of this very primal, like you said, this
Natural
earthy,
thing,
natural.
yeah.
That's so. I mean, everyone says, "Oh, it's what defines you. It like grounds you and holds you as a woman." I'm like, that's not true.
But honestly,
quite
it is so
debilitating.
magical though, because it is the essence of, I mean, the beginning. It is related to life. So it in its
obviously.
nature, I feel it's like very like magical and all of that. It's a power to have also. I feel menstruation is not, I think this topic has only changed now. I don't mind it.
The thing is, I knew we were going to start at the environment, but having 4 women on the same show who all feel so strongly about menstruation in different ways, there was no way that we wouldn't get it going into like this intense femme kind of topic of like rage against the system.
Yeah, I was just wanting to say something of what you were mentioning is like you say, oh, I'm going in circles about what sort of, what products to take or people should use. And I think this is what we try to do also in our sessions, is to share with girls and women, like, okay, what is out there? Which products are there? And looking at disposables in the cup and period panties, and look at all these sort of different aspects of each product of what is inside, how are they made, by whom are they made, what do they mean for your health, what do they mean in terms of money, like how much does it cost you, what does it mean in terms of disposal and for the environment. And to have that all, at least sort of access to that basic information, and the basis of that say, okay, this is actually in my condition, and that might vary also over time or in your cycle, or that is a good product for me, and it might also change. I'm traveling, I'm going to do a long journey, maybe it's not so ideal for me to use a cloth pad, but I'm happy with my cup, or maybe I use a disposable because it's just really, I don't have a place to, etc. So I think it's just this sort of having access to all this sort of basic information around products just enables you to find something that suits you best, and not necessarily to be so sort of black and white about it. Sort of like, okay, I can also be pragmatic and say, okay, sometimes.
What's kind of the when you guys run these sessions, what's kind of like the main, maybe the top two or like the main kind of questions that come from the women that you get to interact with? What's like their leading, burning, like first thing that they want to know?
Kathy, you want to go?
I think there's some different ones. Like when it comes to the product itself, like certainly when it comes to a cloth pad, there are questions about, does it stain, does it leak, like does it perform, like that. It's a really big one. I think there's a real, really natural anxiety and wish not to leak and to be actually exposed as menstruating. There are also other questions too. Like I think one of the really common ideas that we really encounter is this idea of bad blood, pollution, dirty, and all of these associations. So I think these are some of the big themes that we're kind of working with in these sessions, as one, just kind of unpacking and in a way just picking up on what you were saying earlier too. Like I think that there's such a spectrum of where we stand along the line of whether we embrace our menstrual experience as sort of like for some women it can be like a spiritual portal, and for others it's just a nightmare. It's fraught with a lot of pain, and there you are. So and anxiety and discomfort. I think this is also really important, in that we've had to learn how to be really respectful of that spectrum, and again, conversations can just really help to maybe examine sometimes like some of the roots of those perceptions, like that menstrual blood is dirty and disgusting, like if this is one of the common themes. Being able to talk about that in a session can be really powerful, and sometimes help people to shift along that spectrum to a more at least comfortable relationship, maybe not physically comfortable, but at least psychologically comfortable relationship.
I'm curious to know, so the women you guys work with, I'm sure they go back home to their husbands and fathers. What is the male reaction? Has there been support? What's that reaction been like?
Do you want to speak to it, Jessamijn, or?
Yeah. I mean, I cannot sort of really share from direct experience of what sort of the responses are. I mean, some of them that we hear back are, are very supportive, but may not be typical. So it's it's sort of more storytelling than sort of
statistical,
good, statistical information. But what I can see is that, like, for example, we've also done some sessions with young boys and with men, and in general, I find there's an enormous interest in this topic.
Okay.
And where I think, we're sort of held in this taboo, but at the same time, we're also maintaining it and keeping the silence around menstruation.
Yeah.
And so for many men, we've had, for example, men say, like, I see my wife and she's in pain and there's nothing I can do. I cannot really sort of talk about it. It's sort of this thing and so in order to to learn about, okay, what is menstruation? What is actually happening? What is it that women can do to alleviate pain, or men can help them in sort of in alleviating pain? Yeah, and I think there, for example, I did also stitching sessions with men, asking them, okay, to join me, hand stitch pads, and maybe for their sisters or mother or girlfriends. And
I think that's a great activity.
and it was really, it's really very sort of
Bonding in a way.
hard
Pad party. Yeah.
yeah, heartwarming. Also, some of them really wanted to stitch more. It's like, I want to give her 2, 3. I want to,
That's so cute.
and, yeah,
That's so
and,
nice to hear.
yeah. So I think there is really a lot of, what do you say, curiosity and wish to actually care for the other, and to be somehow sort of also part of this conversation.
That's really amazing, because I mean, traditionally, one would expect some kind of challenge when you are dealing with a subject like this in a setup which is not so progressive.
Again, I find this,
this is
it's
actually
interesting when you have this sort of safe space, and I think often it has to do that you are with your peers, no? You are with friends and you're sitting around, and obviously there's somebody who doesn't care talking about it, and there is this possibility to just put out your questions. Like with boys, for example, would ask them to just write down their questions and put them in a hat, so we had sort of anonymous questions, and it's incredible, this sort of, I think it's also, there's a very direct relation also to sexual education, that many of them have no clue what is sort of going on for girls, and how they, however they're sort of fantasizing or relating to it, whether that's real or, it's a really big void, which is super fun to step into.
That's so true. I mean, it takes me back to the conversations that we had when we were in school, when they gave us like the sex ed talk and the period talk. And, you made the girls and guys sit separately, and people were supposed to like write in their questions and put them in a box and answer like the same thing.
Yeah.
And the questions that you asked, you felt very like, oh, you want to know. And then when you hear the questions, you're like, I kind of wanted to know that too. I kind of wanted to know this as well. And then you realize that everyone
has the same
grappling with the
questions,
same concerns and same stuff, because at the end of the day, like at least biologically, the textbook's been written on what's happening to us,
Puberty.
Puberty is happening to everyone. So, no, but it's so, like, Tash, doesn't it make you feel like, yeah, kids are all the same. Everyone just wants to know what's going on.
Yeah, hello, teenagers, this is the thing, no? And I think this is the only way forward to have open conversations, to make a generation of kids who grow up to have the right kind of awareness.
Absolutely. Like the kid, I do also think that is changing. Maybe I'm talking about it just based on my interactions with people who live in the city. I get that is very removed from kind of the conversations that Eco Femme has, but a lot of the people, like the younger generation, they're so much more open and forward and very strict about the fact that, oh no, I'm on my period, so I'm not going to do this. No, my parents know, my friends know, my brothers know, like everyone's like, no, I'm on my period, so I'm not going to come. You're having conversations, and like you can hear the guys being like, nah, dude, she's on her period, let her be, like she's not going to get involved. And you're like, hey, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
that's good. You're accepting that this is it's a real thing. And because for a lot of time, I think women it went two ways. You wrote off women as hysterical and irrational and, not in control when they had their period. So you demonized it in a different way. You were like, oh, she can't be taken seriously when she's on her period because she doesn't know what's going on. And on the other hand, you just didn't talk about it because you're like, oh, it's so gross. Like you don't want to talk about girls and they're bleeding and it's all disgusting. So there are I think there are two very important things that need to be brought down. That first of all, you're not weak, and it's not like you're just flying off the handle. Genuinely, your body is going through a lot of biological changes. And the other thing is it's not gross. it's very natural. It has to happen, and it's important that it happens. So I think it's just I love talking, so I'm glad other people are talking.
I do have one question though for you guys. The challenge of washing the cloth pad at the end of the day. You have your period, your body hurts, you're tired. That is would be my main concern. I would just not be interested in washing the pad and then hanging it to dry. What if there's no sunlight? It's a rainy day.
Yeah. I think this is, I mean, I don't know how good it is to hear this from us, but I can say that many women who switch to cloth pads actually sort of always comment on this piece of how easy it actually is. They thought it would be a big deal, and sort of with all the emotion that you were just sort of putting into it, that actually it's not much work. You come home, you put your cloth pad in a little bit of water to soak, loosens up the blood, and then whenever you have a bit of time, you can just do it either sort of you rinse it out under the tap, you wash it out under the tap until all the blood is gone, and it doesn't take so long. I mean, these pads are also sort of made with flannel fabric that's very sort of, it's easy to absorb, but it also means that when you wash it, it's easy to release. Right. So I think this is one of the things that also women who've been using cloth often find sort of remarkable, that the blood sort of goes so easily. And that has to do with that the structure of the fabric is different than normal cloth that we wear, that's often more tightly woven and sort of holds the blood much more, stains the blood, much more.
Interesting. How many layers of cloth do you put in a pad?
Like 3 or 4 layers inside.
Depends. So the pads come really in all sorts of sizes. So small panty liners, day pads, day pad plus, and like a maxi pad or a night pad.
Liner for sure.
No, I just ordered today. I ordered the 4 one.
Okay.
They look like so many different sizes, and I was like, oh, this looks fun.
Yeah.
Actually, it just looks fun. So I'm happy that you address. No, continue.
Just to say that, so each of those have different amount of layers because they're for light or heavier periods.
Yeah.
You also have the super comfy, which is a really large size pads for women who just either want to feel really sort of, I don't know, who like a large size pad or want to feel sort of secure are very heavy.
I think another benefit of cloth would be that it's not like the regular pads, which definitely I used to hate wearing normal pads also in the summer because it makes you itchy and chafy and all that stuff, that
the
pad material.
So my concern was mainly this washing thing when I was reading about it, and I would say that you're right, it is kind of a leading concern. But another concern I had about the cloth pad is leakage. What's the situation with the leaking? Because I'm not saying, I think I have a pretty normal flow, I'll be honest about that, but even sometimes when you wear a tampon, you kind of, sorry, I'm so sorry. My brother has just walked in. I'm recording in his room. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so like I was saying, sometimes you bleed, even you land up leaking from your tampon as well. And that's supposed to catch a lot of stuff. So I'm concerned as to what's the cloth pads resistance against leakage.
So at the back of the pads, there's actually a leak-proof layer. And so you have cloth, and then the last layer is cotton that's laminated with a leak-proof layer. So it cannot really go through. There are possibilities that you have leakage. For example, in the beginning, when you are just starting with cloth pads, the fabric is very new. And so it's like a towel that is not fully absorbent yet in the beginning. So after maybe 3 washes, it's most absorbent. Of course, sometimes also our flow comes in like in gushes. And so that is also a difficulty with
clots and all.
So it has to very quickly absorb that if you don't want to have a leakage. And so there are those sort of, cases where you can have a sort of a spillover. I don't know how different that is with
No,
the disposables.
exactly.
It's
That's
with
true.
everything,
Yeah, I
I've
was
had a
gonna say
leak
with
with a cup
everything.
also. Like nothing is
Yeah.
foolproof. Sometimes the adjustment is off. Sometimes something is off
Yeah.
if you're meant to stain. It's just gonna happen.
No, I
Yeah.
know. I
And
completely get it. It was just more like
Yep.
you had. I think you've been shown so much advertising of disposable products being, foolproof
safe
in
and
safe and in
leak-proof, yeah.
this way. So that when you're looking at an alternative, I mean, I'm very excited to try it, definitely. But I was like, these are my reservations. Even if I get over
Yeah.
the washing thing, because not squeamish, so I don't really. That was like, yeah, okay, I'll figure it out. Can't be that complicated. But this leakage thing, I was a bit concerned about that, because if you're
Yeah.
going to work, like if my thing was, if I'm leaving the house for the day, normally you change a pad or you change a tampon when you feel that it's getting too full. But my fear here was like,
Yeah.
what am I going to do when I'm
You have to learn. Yes, this is
how
this.
long-
I mean, in a way, with a pad and a tampon, somehow your body has learned the messages. No, like, oh, now it
Yes.
feels like I need to change it, and it's the same with the pad. Because it's a new product, you will need to learn those sort of subtle messages from the pad. Like, oh, it feels like that when actually it is full and time to change. And so we always say, like, okay, just make it easy on yourself. Try it when you're at home or in a place where you can easily check and so with that, sort of build a little bit sort of a relationship with it, so to say, and so that when you're going out, that it's also and I think again it is also learning about your own cycle and making choices that sort of match that. Like for myself, I am a very heavy bleeder, so when I have my heavy days, I use a cup and a pad, and on my other days I use pads. So it's just sort of trying to find what works for you.
For you, yeah, absolutely.
I did want to know more about the thing that your pad for a pad, like that kind of platform, which again, that's another great way of incentivizing someone like me, because
To buy a pad.
yeah, because I carry a lot of first world guilt on my daily basis. Like whatever purchase I'm making, I'm like, so like this kind of a purchase, I think that's a great way. So this is exactly like you buy a pad and then Eco Femme donates pads to people who need them.
Kathy, you want to speak to it?
Sure. So, I mean, Eco Femme's a social enterprise, which basically means that we have a kind of commercial wing and we have a non-commercial, and the income from the commercial is what helps us to fund and sustain the non-commercial.
Absolutely.
So we have one program which is called Pad for Pad, and actually that's primarily funded by our international customers. So every customer in abroad, when they buy a pad, they're actually sponsoring, paying for another pad for a girl here in India. And we club those donations together, and then we offer them as part of an educational session in schools. We work a lot with partners as well around the country. So the girls they get a 3-hour class, and at the end, they have the option of taking a cloth pad kit, and they get 4 cloth pads. So that's one program. And the other, in India, when people buy our Eco Femme cloth pads, they're also helping to subsidize pads. So for rural women, we don't charge the commercial prices because it would be too expensive for them.
Yeah.
So we offer them at quite heavily subsidized rates. And we use the profits to help us to be able to fund the gap on those subsidies, so that we can also make sure that really our ideal is that cost doesn't become a barrier for anyone who would like to make the switch to a cloth pad.
Absolutely, because I think some of the, like, Tash, we talked about, remember we were talking about that brand, I forget the name, but they make them out of bamboo fibers. They make pads out of bamboo.
There's quite a few new brands that are making eco-friendly pads. But they are disposable also.
But they're disposable. And anyway, those, I feel, I know that I feel like someone's going to judge me saying that, oh, how can you call it expensive? But it is. It is an expensive product, because if you've been using Whisper Stay Free and you get the multi-pack for like 300 rupees, and that's enough for like 3 period cycles or 2 period cycles, in this little pack where there's like 7 or 8 petite very sweet looking things. I'm like, first of all, this is not going to hold up. I'm going to need so many of these. And then they're so much more expensive. It almost, I don't know. I know you're not supposed to be deterred by price if like the environment is at stake, but it is a deterrent. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Like, how much can I keep paying for this? So I think
Because it is convenience over, for most of us, I think, for most people living in
Absolutely.
cities and who are maybe not too aware. And honestly, this is the guilt I think we all have of not doing
Yes.
enough for the environment. Um, Apart from the menstruation part of it, I think even in our regular everyday lives, and I think you guys have been living in Auroville for very, very, very long, right? And I'm assuming you live a far more sustainable life than us.
I think we've not done an environment episode consistently because we're just like,
Because
no,
we
no,
are
no,
not
no.
good at it, at doing this. And
This is so
I've been
bad.
living here in the mountains, and it's so different because here when you eat fruits, you go and feed the peels to the goats immediately or just leave them there. And then in Bombay, you have to segregate the wet waste and the dry waste, and the people come and collect, and you don't even know what they're doing with
That's
it.
because you don't know. I'm convinced that
They mix it all up.
Literally, I'm spending time here segregating things. I'm washing the yogurt container. I'm washing the can. So it's like, it's clean from inside so you can go straight for processing. And then when you see the garbage collecting truck when you're driving alongside it and you're like, it's all mixed. Nothing is being separated. I'm just wasting my time. But yeah, there's a lot of guilt.
How's life in Auroville? I'd love to know what's the sustainability journey living so close to nature in a community like that. What's that been like for you?
Sure. I just want to say one thing though about guilt, if I can.
Yes,
because,
please.
I just sort of feel first of all that that I don't think we all know guilt, but I don't think it really helps to. It's not very motivating. It can be motivating in a way. I get where it's motivating, but I really don't think making any behavior change, whether it's to a cloth pad or sustainable menstrual product
Out
or
of guilt,
anything,
yeah.
should be because we're feeling guilty and we should do this for the environment. I really think these products need to stand on their own legs, really, as having more than just an environmental benefit. You talked about cost. I think there's also health benefits. So I just wanted to bring that fuller picture.
Absolutely.
And again,
Absolutely.
I think we can take small steps. I think that, I don't know, guilt is kind of toxic in a way as a feeling.
Yes.
And I don't think it's really helpful to kind of force anybody.
Kathy is spilling the real adulthood beans. This is the adulthood journey, guys. Guilt, anything coming from guilt, if you're doing something out of guilt, yeah, it's toxic. I agree.
And learned the hard way, believe you me, like I've done guilt. I've done a lot of it in my life.
From a real adult listener.
I'm a convert. I'm definitely converted. And just maybe, coming to Auroville, I mean, I guess it's a completely different way of life here. And even, I came from Australia, and I think coming to Auroville was really an opening of my sort of global and ecological eyes. And it gave me a chance to sort of, because the place is amazing. If you, anyone who doesn't know about it, I mean, it's really a kind of sort of experimental city or township in the making, and it's got a population of about 3,000 permanent residents from all over the world, including mostly Indians actually, but a mixed population. I think there are about 50 nationalities here. So many experiments, and many of them are centered around sustainable ways of living. So, whether it's organic farming or renewable energy or, transport that's electric. It's really easy here, I think, to adopt a more sustainable lifestyle because there's just a lot of support for it. And being immersed in such a community, it really just gives you a chance to think about all these lifestyle choices. So, I think personally it was radical in a way. I mean, I was aware of environmental issues, but again, I came here 24 years ago, and I think we were starting to talk about these things.
Yeah.
Now it's so much in our face, but certainly pollution was, still in everybody's face. So, I think I became aware of, for example, consumption choices and trying to choose products that weren't going to, wrapped in plastic, or for example, I think we're really embedded and immersed in a kind of culture here that's sort of trying to model a different way of living. So it's easy, and we have beautiful forests here, which I think, we're just so embedded in nature, and that already gives a sense of you start to feel the love of nature, and of course from that place making these changes is so much easier. It's not because of guilt, it's because of love, I would say.
That's so beautiful.
That is, it makes me want to pack up and leave the city.
I have to come back to the city this week, and believe me, I've been having a lot of thoughts and feelings about it. In the city, it's just so easy to forget about nature and go on living your life and disposing and using and consuming to no end.
But I also, I in defense of our lifestyle is also that I would like to say, and again, this is not in disrespect to the choices that you guys have made, which obviously have benefited not only you, but the community around you and women at large. But it's more that I don't think that you need to completely make the switch of moving entirely to this kind of a lifestyle instead. Like, we have to find realistic ways to be more sustainable, more aware.
In our everyday lives.
In our everyday lives, right? Because the answer, at least then I'll speak for myself, the answer for me is never going to be about packing up shop and moving to Auroville. No matter how much I would love, and you know this, Dash, how much I would love to just be like, I'm out, peace out, I'm going to go, just go and live amongst the trees for a while. But that isn't sustainable for my life, because monetarily that doesn't work for me right now. My bread and butter is very much in the city, and it's here. So I think you're right about not feeling guilty, but speaking as someone a little bit representing my generation and my age group and our working mentality, a lot of times guilt is a toxic word, but we have to find ways to feel better about the decisions we're making as well, because we've become that kind of a generation where we need to see some sort of give and take. Where wow, if I'm going to make this choice, what's in it for not just me, but for the environment? Does this fulfill the stuff that I need to now be doing as a 27, 28, 29-year-old? Because now you know what I'm trying to say, right, Tasha? I feel like I'm saying it in a circle, but I'm to be a responsible adult, I feel like I need to make responsible choices. Yeah. And oftentimes making those responsible or sustainable choices isn't very easy. It's not like a natural reaction, because the environment doesn't allow that. So making these kind of decisions of switching to a sustainable pad, or deciding that I'm only going to use glass bottle products, or buying stuff very locally and from a local vegetable vendor instead of going to a hypermarket. Those are the things that I can take some ownership over and feel better about it, because I'm it made me feel a little better and alleviate that little bit of guilt that I do carry with me. So you're absolutely right that I don't think it should come from a place of guilt, but I do think switching to just even cotton pads for women,
I think it's a good step.
It's a good step for us to start to unravel some of the damage that we have already done just from living our normal lives.
Absolutely.
And I think also often when we make these sort of choices, we also see sort of other sides to it. No? So it might look like a sacrifice to switch to something that in comparison to what you're using right now seems less, because maybe you have to wash it but I think often the experience is not necessarily that. We've had much of feedback of women who, for example, said that actually washing, they made the switch, for example, for environmental reasons, and then also learned about, and maybe also health, but they then found out, okay, actually I don't have the rashes and the itchiness anymore, and it's so much better. I just feel so much better in my body. And washing, I thought it would be a big deal, but actually the thing that I discovered was that I was really icky about my blood, and now I'm sort of, it sort of brings up. So it's more that I feel often when we're sorry, just to finish that part, because it's something that so many women have shared with us, is the fact that you have to sort of touch your blood sort of really is a good confrontation, and to sort of ask yourself, why do I feel like that about it? Where did that come from? How do I want to feel about it? And sort of this thing, okay, I just really need to sort of, in order to love myself fully, I also really need to be okay with this. This is just, this is part of me. Anyway, just to say that once we make these changes, maybe they were initiated by feelings of guilt, but often they're very sort of, you feel nice and good, and there's sort of sides to it that you just didn't sort of, you just hadn't sort of expected. And nice surprises.
All the feedback actually that we've seen for the pads and everything has been that they're just softer, and nobody's getting like I don't get the rash anymore. I'm not itchy, and I was like, oh, this is going to be the game changer.
Yeah. What you talked about, like having to touch your blood and confront it, it's also such a nice grounding and connecting to your nature, because there is nature within us and nature outside of us, and so many of us are cut off from the nature outside of us because of the city we live in, the situation, that wherever, geography. I think a small way to even just connect to nature is to connect with your own nature and the 5 elements inside of you. Listeners, sorry, you know me, I'm on a trip. But you were saying something, Kathy, before I interrupt.
But I think you're touching on something that's, it's just in a way very connected, because I think you're touching on a connecting piece, which is really important, that in a way, I really believe that one of the reasons why disposables have made such a strong, have been so successful, is partly rooted in this kind of aversion that we have, or this dislike, disgust towards our bodies and towards, menstrual blood. And like the only way I think these products can really perpetuate and get so much traction is if we continue to believe that this is really dirty and disgusting, and we don't want to kind of connect to it. I think that, because we wouldn't actually necessarily, I think when we really understand these connections and that it doesn't involve a big sacrifice, why would we choose a product like that's so full of plastic and chemicals, it's not really good for our bodies, it's expensive, and why would we choose that if we've just absorbed so much crap, really. It's kind of that the more that women kind of look at menstruation through different eyes and at least get curious about it and are willing even to make a little experiment and try it out, without having to make the switch forever, but just to even touch into that thing, it's often a big doorway that has far-reaching consequences for really actually getting much more kind of connected with yourself. And I think this is the subversive power of something like a cloth pad. It's actually a Trojan horse for something that's much more interesting and deep and profound.
That's such a beautiful way of putting it. Absolutely. I think you're so right.
It's a Trojan horse for so I'm about to steal that phrase. Just take it.
Got it.
But it's I'm very excited to use this. I'm going to, now that I have a connect with you, I'm going to give you some personal feedback. Like, guys, I'm so in touch with it now. I'm living.
And maybe not.
But no, I'm excited to make the switch, only because I'm actually scared of the cup. So this is my only other option now if I gotta go sustainable.
I advocate for the cup also, listeners. If you are brave enough, it's nothing to be brave, but I think you should try the cup also.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't do it. I'm so scared of it.
I was so scared the first time. I thought it's lost in my body. Yes, the first time I put it, I couldn't get it out. I thought it's gone. My body has consumed it.
Absorbed. It ate it up.
It ate it up.
So maybe this is for the listeners. The cup can't go anywhere.
But that's
a dead end.
But that's what I learned as well. When I used the tampon for the first time, I was like, it's in, but now it's gone. It's been like sucked in by my body. And then my friend was like, it's like a dead end alley, right? Like you can't travel further upstream. I was like, okay, at least I can find it. But yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And this has just been such a nice conversation in general.
Absolutely.
And thank you for being a part of it.
Would you have any adulthood takeaways for our listeners? The journey of sustainability vis-a-vis the journey of adulthood. How can we
Anything.
make these two, anything about these things?
I
mean,
think
I think
for my
that-
go.
Go on, Jessamijn. Okay. Yeah, the word that comes to my mind is just curiosity in a way. And to be willing to just take those little steps that feel natural. Like, I think that we're bombarded with so many messages about where we should change. And I think we're actually really frightened by the situation that we're facing on Earth at the moment. Like, if we can even feel it enough, that it's terrifying. And and there's a lot of shoulds out there of what we should do and how we should do this and that. And I just really feel to start somewhere, and just start with a small step that feels natural and connects with your own heart and what's possible where you are, and not to sort of overpile your plate with the shoulds, because I think we can get kind of a paralysis in the face of all the things that we know we should be doing, and yet as you rightly said, it's hard. And but look out there, there's so many people who are making kind of constructive changes. I mean, find your inspiration, make the small steps, and be encouraging of yourself and each other, your friends and your peers along the way, that we can do this, but it's really one step at a time. And I think we have to be kind of willing to be a little bit gentle at the same time as a bit fearless as well on this journey. So that
I love
one
it.
thing.
Gentleness and fearlessness.
Yeah, I was thinking also along same lines, in the sense that for me, what's always really sort of interesting is to awaken to in yourself your passions, to sort of see, what is it that I really love doing. And what I've seen for myself is that those things are the possibilities when you are also meeting with peers who have very similar sort of passions, how that sort of can just really, I mean, for me, Eco Femme is one example of that, in where first starting just with Kathy, the two of us going on this journey, and bit by bit, the whole sort of team that grew around it, is that, you can really feed each other and help each other. I mean, we're all sort of growing in through that process, and it helps also when we have to be a bit either. I mean, I'm not always fearless, not at all. I'm a frightful creature, but with others, to be with others that share those sort of passions, and in a way sort of create within that safe space to be free and follow passions, I think is really powerful.
Wow.
These are doable things. Find your tribe and take small steps to being a little less scared and a little more brave every day. This is me telling myself right now, because it's been a hard Monday and I needed to hear this.
Yeah, this has been such a nice episode, and I've had such a nice time chatting with you.
It was really nice to get to know you guys. And can you please tell our listeners where they can find, obviously, Eco Femme is on Instagram, and it's online and it's very accessible. But if they wanted to reach you guys, is there any space that they could find you and chat with you?
Absolutely. They can always, they can always write to us and email us. That's, I think, always the sort of easiest way to connect. And I think also, if anybody feels very sort of passionate about or interested in sustainable menstruation, we have a program for ambassadors who we help to sort of discover what is it that they would like to do in this field of sustainable menstruation, and we try to support them as much as we can, looking at their needs. So that's maybe also something to
Definitely.
mention.
I'm sure there must be people, us included, who would at some point want to help and give back in that way. Specifically I feel, for the tribe of women. Like I want to give back to the girls, be like, I got you. But thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, exactly.
It
and
was
listeners,
It's been
you
a
for
pleasure.
listening.
Really enjoyed it so much. It's been
Yay.
really a lot of fun and delightful to talk. So very open and curious conversation. Thank you.
thanks, guys.
Really fun. Great.
Okay, listeners, you know where to find us, and you know where to find more fun podcasts like this on the ivmpodcast.com website or the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts. Write to us, follow us, listen to this, and we'll be back next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.